My mom called me too materialistic, while she was literally wearing the necklace I bought her with my first real paycheck. That moment hit me harder than I expected. My name is Lynn, I'm 26, and I grew up in Colorado with a mom who always found a way to twist things. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. That morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw my mom, Marla, sipping coffee, wearing the silver pendant I had saved months to buy for her. She looked at my thrift store purse and said I cared too much about showing off. I didn't even know what to say. I had spent my whole life giving her everything I could, hoping it would make her treat me better. Later that day, I overheard her telling my Aunt Tess that I only bought gifts to make her feel guilty. That I was greedy and selfish. Hearing her lie about me broke something inside. I started pulling back after that. No more paying her bills or buying groceries. I began saving for my own place, and she grew furious when she realized I was serious. When Tess told me my mom had pawned almost every gift I bought her over the years, including things with sentimental value, everything made sense. The necklace she wore that morning? She planned to pawn it the next day. So I left. I moved out quietly, and without my support, she lost her apartment. When she came to my new place begging for help, I finally told her the truth. I was done being used. I wasn't materialistic. I was just finally choosing myself. Growing up, I learned early that my mom, Marla, had two very different sides. People outside our home saw her as warm, polite, and generous. They loved her, trusted her, and thought she was the kind of woman who would do anything for her child. Inside the house, though, everything changed. Her smile disappeared the moment the door closed, and the warmth everyone admired never reached me. Whenever I needed something simple, she acted like I was asking for the world. If I mentioned worn-out shoes or empty notebooks for school, she'd snap that I was being ungrateful. She said kids who wanted things were spoiled, and she didn't raise a spoiled daughter. Hearing that again and again made me feel like normal needs were sins. Marla also had a way of making me ashamed of anything I owned. If a relative gave me something nice, she'd stare at it like it offended her. She'd say I was getting too proud, even if it was just a small gift. When I saved a little money from babysitting and bought myself a decent jacket from a clearance rack, she said I was acting like I thought I was better than her. I didn't understand how having something that simply kept me warm could upset her so much. Over time, I noticed that the nicer things I had, the colder she became. I learned to hide things, or not want anything at all. It felt safer that way. I thought if I stayed quiet, she would calm down, but nothing I did ever changed her attitude. That kind of environment stayed with me for years, shaping how I saw myself and what I thought I deserved. It took a long time to realize none of it was my fault. As I got older, the pressure at home didn't ease up, it shifted into something heavier. Marla stopped arguing about small things and began leaning on me for anything involving money. It started with little requests she called temporary help, small amounts she promised she'd return. But those promises faded fast, and the requests grew. Soon, she wasn't asking anymore. She acted like my paycheck belonged to her the moment it hit my account. She called it responsibility. She said every daughter should support her mother, and that it was my turn to step up. If I hesitated, she accused me of abandoning her. I didn't want to fight, so I paid the electricity 1 month, the water the next, and eventually everything in between. She treated each payment like something she deserved, not something I sacrificed for. And every time I tried to save a little for myself, she'd find a way to pull it from me. To keep up, I took on extra shifts wherever I could. Late nights turned into early mornings, and weekends disappeared. I was exhausted, but I kept going because I was scared of what would happen if I didn't. The more I worked, the more she expected. If a bill showed up, she slid it across the table without a word, assuming I'd handle it. When I mentioned needing a break, she brushed it off, saying young people had energy to spare. It felt like I was carrying both of our lives on my back. No matter how much I earned, it was never enough. There was always another expense, another excuse, another guilt trip. I didn't realize how deeply I was sinking until I looked at my account one day and realized everything I worked for was gone before I ever had the chance to use it for myself. After years of scraping by, something finally changed for me. I was hired at a veterinary lab, a job that came with regular hours, dependable pay, and the kind of structure I had never had before. For the first time, I could breathe without worrying that a single setback would knock me off balance. The steady routine felt strange at first, almost unreal, but I held on to it like a lifeline. Each payday felt like proof that my effort finally counted for something. With that new sense of security, I wanted to do something meaningful. Even though things between Marla and me were complicated, I still carried this tiny hope that we could find some kind of peace. I thought maybe if I showed her I cared, she might meet me halfway. So I saved a little each week until I could afford something more thoughtful than anything I'd been able to give before. I went to a small jewelry shop near the lab and found a simple silver pendant. It wasn't flashy, but it had a quiet beauty to it. I had the jeweler engrave her initials on the back, imagining she might smile when she saw it. I pictured giving it to her over dinner, maybe having a calm moment for once. I wanted it to be a gesture that said, "I'm trying." When I finally handed her the box, I felt a mix of nerves and hope. She opened it slowly, running her fingers over the metal, and for a second I thought I saw softness in her expression. That tiny flicker was enough for me to believe things could get better. I wanted this to be the beginning of something different, a small step toward the mother-daughter relationship I'd always wished we could have. One morning, I stepped into the living room before heading out, still half asleep and not expecting anything unusual. Marla was standing near the window, adjusting her hair. The first thing I noticed was the pendant resting against her collarbone, the same one I had chosen with so much care. She touched it like it had always belonged to her, not even glancing my way as I entered. I had picked up a simple purse from a second-hand shop a few days earlier because my old one had torn. It wasn't fancy, just sturdy enough to hold together through long workdays. As I walked past her, she glanced at it and let out a sharp little sound, almost a laugh but not quite. Then she looked me over from head to toe, her eyes stopping on the purse like it offended her. Without warning, she said, "You're becoming too materialistic, Lynn. It's embarrassing." The tone wasn't concerned or gentle. It was cold, dismissive, like she had caught me doing something shameful. Her hand even brushed the pendant as she spoke, as if she didn't realize what she was wearing, or maybe she did, and that was the point. I froze for a moment, trying to understand how she could say something like that while wearing something I had bought out of kindness. The words hit harder than I expected, not because the purse meant anything, but because of how quickly she twisted things. Part of me wanted to argue, to ask how a cheap bag made me some kind of show-off. Another part of me was too tired to start another confrontation that would only end with her turning everything around on me. So I stayed quiet. I grabbed my keys, nodded once, and walked out the door. I didn't know it then, but that small moment would end up revealing far more than I imagined. One morning, I stepped into the living room before heading out, still half asleep and not expecting anything unusual. Marla was standing near the window, adjusting her hair. The first thing I noticed was the pendant resting against her collarbone, the same one I had chosen with so much care. She touched it like it had always belonged to her, not even glancing my way as I entered. I had picked up a simple purse from a second-hand shop a few days earlier because my old one had torn. It wasn't fancy, just sturdy enough to hold together through long workdays. As I walked past her, she glanced at it and let out a sharp little sound, almost a laugh but not quite. Then she looked me over from head to toe, her eyes stopping on the purse like it offended her. Without warning, she said, "You're becoming too materialistic, Lynn. It's embarrassing." The tone wasn't concerned or gentle. It was cold, dismissive, like she had caught me doing something shameful. Her hand even brushed the pendant as she spoke, as if she didn't realize what she was wearing, or maybe she did, and that was the point. I froze for a moment, trying to understand how she could say something like that while wearing something I had bought out of kindness. The words hit harder than I expected, not because the purse meant anything, but because of how quickly she twisted things. Part of me wanted to argue, to ask how a cheap bag made me some kind of show-off. Another part of me was too tired to start another confrontation that would only end with her turning everything around on me. So I stayed quiet. I grabbed my keys, nodded once, and walked out the door. I didn't know it then, but that small moment would end up revealing far more than I imagined. After hearing what Marla said to Tess, something settled inside me. I wasn't ready to confront her, but I knew I couldn't keep living the same way. The first change I made was simple: I kept my wallet closed. When Bill showed up, I didn't reach for my card. When she hinted about needing a little help, I acted like I didn't catch the message. I didn't explain anything, I just stopped feeding the pattern. Next, I reduced what I bought for the house. Groceries had always fallen on me, but I let the fridge run low and left the pantry untouched. I cooked small meals for myself after work and kept leftovers in my room. It wasn't an attempt to punish her, I was trying to protect what little I had left. Every dollar I didn't spend on the house went into a quiet savings goal. I opened a separate account and put away whatever I could, even if it meant skipping small comforts. The idea of getting my own place felt distant, but it gave me something to work toward, something that was mine. Each contribution to that account felt like a step toward freedom, even if it was tiny. I didn't tell anyone, and I especially didn't tell her. I just kept going, week after week, building a small escape route. Marla noticed quickly. The moment she realized the support she depended on wasn't coming, her mood sharpened. She accused me of turning my back on her, of forgetting who raised me. She said I was acting cold, like I didn't care what happened to us. She even tried to guilt me by insisting that families were supposed to stick together, but her voice carried more anger than hurt. I didn't argue or explain. I just let her talk while I stayed focused on the plan forming quietly in the background. Each outburst only confirmed I was doing the right thing. After hearing the truth from Tess, I spent an entire evening sitting on my bedroom floor with a box of old papers. I pulled out every receipt, statement, and bill I had held on to without really knowing why. As I sifted through them, a pattern formed: months and years of payments I had made to keep the house running. Rent transfers, utility charges, grocery totals, repairs, and emergencies that had all been quietly placed on my shoulders. Seeing everything in one place made the reality impossible to ignore. It wasn't a few favors. It was a full record of how deeply she relied on me. The next morning, I waited until Marla was settled in the living room. I didn't raise my voice or accuse her of anything. I set the papers on the coffee table and explained, one line at a time, how long I had been carrying the weight alone. She barely glanced at the documents. Instead, she rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. When I said I wouldn't be covering anything else, her expression shifted from annoyance to disbelief. I repeated myself calmly, I wouldn't be supporting her anymore. I didn't wait for the argument I knew she wanted. I packed my things over the next few days, and with the help of my coworker Dane, who brought his truck and didn't ask too many questions, I moved into a small place across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful, and it was mine. Without my paycheck filling the gaps, Marla's situation unraveled quickly. Bills piled up, notices arrived, and within 2 months she had to leave the apartment she once claimed was her domain. I didn't celebrate her downfall, but I didn't step in to stop it either. The consequences were simply the result of a truth she had refused to acknowledge. A few weeks after I settled into my new apartment, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Marla standing there, the same pendant necklace around her neck, her hair messy, her eyes wide with desperation. She didn't apologize or explain, she just asked for help, for money, for some way to fix what had fallen apart. Her voice trembled as she listed her troubles, expecting me to step in as I always had. I took a deep breath, holding back the anger and hurt that had been simmering for months. For the first time, I spoke without fear. "You called me materialistic while you stole everything I gave you," I said, letting each word land carefully. I could see her flinch, like she hadn't expected to hear the truth spoken aloud so plainly. I continued, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. I told her she needed more than money from me, she needed guidance, reflection, and accountability for her actions. Not her daughter's resources, not her constant labor, and certainly not my patience any longer. I reminded her that she couldn't keep repeating the same patterns and expect me to rescue her again. She opened her mouth, probably to argue or beg, but I didn't let her. I stepped aside, letting the door close between us. The click of the lock sounded louder than I imagined it would. I felt a tremor in my chest, a mix of fear, relief, and something like triumph. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't from hesitation. It was from finally standing up, finally cutting the tie that had bound me for too long. And in that moment, I knew I had taken the first step toward a life that was completely my own. After the confrontation, I realized I couldn't move forward carrying all the old weight alone. I started seeing a therapist, someone who helped me untangle the guilt I had always carried from responsibility I never asked for. Slowly, I learned that just because I had been expected to fix everything didn't mean I was obligated to. I could take care of myself without feeling selfish. Outside of therapy, I began building a support system that felt safe and genuine. Dane, who had helped me move, became more than a coworker, he was someone I could rely on without judgment. A few others at the lab and even neighbors who had noticed me struggling offered friendship and guidance. It wasn't a family tied by blood, but it was a family I chose, one that reminded me I didn't have to tolerate manipulation to feel loved or valued. I also allowed myself small joys I had long denied. I bought a few plants to brighten the apartment, cookware that made cooking enjoyable instead of a chore, and soft blankets that made the space feel like mine. Each purchase, each little indulgence, wasn't about showing off or being materialistic, it was about claiming a life where my comfort and happiness mattered. Bit by bit, the apartment transformed into a place of peace and security. The fear and tension that had followed me for years began to loosen, replaced with a quiet confidence. I was learning to trust myself, to set boundaries, and to enjoy life without guilt. Every day felt like a small victory, a reminder that I could live fully, freely, and on my own terms. The life I had once only dreamed of was slowly becoming real. Months after everything had settled, I found the pendant necklace tucked in a corner of my new apartment, left behind during one of Marla's frantic visits. I picked it up and held it for a moment, feeling the weight of all it had represented, the hope, the betrayal, the anger, and the lessons it carried. I didn't wear it, and I didn't display it. Instead, I slid it into a drawer and closed it carefully. It wasn't a keepsake of love or nostalgia, it was a marker, a quiet reminder of the path I had walked to reclaim my life. Every time I glanced at that drawer, I remembered the long nights of working extra shifts, the years of being used and misunderstood, and the courage it took to finally say no. It reminded me how far I had come, not just physically, moving into my own space, but emotionally, learning to value myself above others' manipulations. The necklace had once symbolized someone else's control, but now it marked my independence, a testament to the boundaries I had finally set. I often caught myself thinking back to that day she wore it and called me materialistic. I smiled quietly to myself, no bitterness left, just clarity. I wasn't greedy or superficial. All those accusations had been hers to bear. What I had done was give myself something I'd been denied for too long, self-respect, care, and freedom. Holding the memory in that small silver piece, I whispered softly to no one but myself, I wasn't materialistic. I was just finally giving myself the love I could never buy for her. And in that moment, I felt whole, knowing the past couldn't touch the life I had finally claimed. Hey besties! Thanks for sticking with me till the very end of this story. Growing up, I gave everything I had to a mother who never appreciated it, only to be lied about and used. When I finally stood up for myself, I discovered strength, independence, and a chosen family that truly cared. Life isn't always fair, but setting boundaries can change everything. If this story moved you,